The war had lasted for 200 years. 200 years of burning planets, dying soldiers, and broken dreams. The Galactic Coalition had thrown everything they had against the Vorn hegemony. They had sent their best ships. They had sacrificed their bravest warriors. They had spent wealth that could have built paradise across 1,000 worlds. And still they were losing. The Vorn were merciless. They did not negotiate. They did not show kindness. They conquered world after world, system after system, until their empires stretched across 3,000 planets. Every species in the galaxy had tried to stop them. Every species had failed. Now, in the Great Hall of the Coalition Assembly, leaders from 100 different worlds sat in heavy silence. They had gathered to discuss something none of them wanted to say out loud: surrender. The word hung in the air like poison, but what choice did they have? Their fleets were broken. Their people were exhausted. Hope itself had become a memory. It was in this moment of despair that the humans spoke. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the assembly hall. She was a small woman by human standards, with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too much death. Her species had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. To the ancient races of the Coalition, humans were children. Newcomers, primitives who had barely left their cradle world. The alien delegates looked at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance. What could a human possibly offer? Their entire fleet consisted of less than 50 ships. They had no great weapons, no ancient technologies. They were nothing. But Elena Vasquez did not look like nothing. She stood straight and tall, and when she spoke, her voice filled the massive chamber. "Give us one ship," she said. "One crew. 60 days. We will end this war without firing a single weapon." For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the laughter began. It started with the Krellian ambassador, a massive creature with scales like armor. His laugh was deep and rumbling, like rocks falling down a mountain. Soon others joined him. The Veshan delegates clicked their mandibles in amusement. The Orvani representatives made sounds that their translators could only describe as mocking. "You will end the war," the Krellian ambassador said when he could speak again. "You? A species that was still fighting with primitive projectile weapons when my grandfather was born. The Vorn have crushed fleets of 10,000 ships. They have destroyed civilizations older than your entire evolutionary history. And do you think one ship can stop them?" Elena did not flinch. She did not look away. She simply waited for the laughter to die down, and then she spoke again. "The Coalition has been fighting the Vorn the same way for 200 years, she said. "You send ships. They destroy them. You send more ships. They destroy those too. You have tried everything except the one thing they do not expect. The one thing they cannot fight against. And what is that?" The Krellian demanded. "Kindness." This time, the silence lasted longer. The alien stared at the human captain as if she had lost her mind. Perhaps she had. Perhaps the stress of their dying galaxy had broken something inside her. That was the only explanation that made sense. But there was one being in the assembly who was not laughing. Korveth was a Veshan strategist, old and scarred from decades of war. He had lost 3 broods to Vorn attacks. He had watched his homeworld burn. He had no reason to believe in miracles, and yet something in the human's eyes made him pause. "You are serious," he said. It was not a question. "I am," Elena replied. "The Vorn have never faced an enemy that did not fight back. They have never encountered a species that chose to help instead of harm. They do not know what to do with mercy. It is a weapon they have never seen. It is not a weapon at all," the Krellian said. "It is suicide." "Maybe," Elena admitted. "But you are already planning to surrender. You have already accepted death. At least let us try something different before the end." The debate lasted for hours. Most of the delegates thought the human was insane. Some thought she was simply stupid. But in the end, desperation won. The Coalition had nothing left to lose. If this foolish human wanted to fly into Vorn space and get herself killed, what did it matter? At least it would buy them a few more weeks to prepare their surrender terms. The vote passed by the smallest margin in Coalition history. Captain Alina Vasquez was given command of the UES Persistence, a mid-sized vessel with minimal weapons and a crew of 847 humans. She was also assigned an observer, someone to witness whatever happened and report back to the Coalition. Corvath volunteered for the position. He told himself it was because someone needed to document humanity's failure. He told himself it was his duty as a strategist. But deep inside, in a place he did not like to examine, he wondered if perhaps he simply wanted to believe. On the day of departure, Corvath stood on the bridge of the Persistence and watched the human crew prepare for their journey. They moved with purpose and energy. They laughed and joked with each other. They did not look like people who were about to die. "You truly believe this will work," Corvath said to Captain Vasquez. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm and steady. "I believe that 200 years of war has solved nothing. I believe that the Vorn are not monsters. They are people who have forgotten that there is any other way to live. And I believe that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to fight." "Psst. The Vorn will not see it that way," Corvath said. "They will see weakness. They will destroy you." Elena smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and knowing, and somehow still hopeful. "Maybe," she said. "But we have a saying on Earth, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar." Corvath did not understand the reference. He did not know what flies or honey or vinegar were, but he understood the meaning behind the words. "You are either the bravest beings I have ever met," he said, "or the most foolish." "On Earth, those are often the same thing," Elena replied. The Persistence jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the safety of Coalition space behind. Ahead of them lay 3,000 conquered worlds. Ahead of them lay the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever known. Ahead of them lay almost certain death. But Captain Elena Vasquez was not afraid. She had a plan. A crazy, impossible, beautiful plan. And she was going to see it through to the end. The war was about to change. The galaxy just did not know it yet. The Persistence did not hide. This was the first thing that confused the Vorn. Every enemy they had ever faced tried to sneak through their space. Every enemy used stealth and shadows and fear, but the human ship flew with all its lights blazing. It broadcast its position on every frequency. It announced itself to anyone who would listen. Corvath thought this was madness. He stood on the bridge and watched the tactical display with growing horror. Every Vorn patrol in the sector could see them. Every defense station had their coordinates. They were painting a target on their own hull. "They will send ships to intercept us," he told Captain Vasquez. "We cannot outrun Vorn interceptors." "I know," Elena said calmly. "That is the plan." Before Corvath could ask what she meant, the navigation officer called out. They had arrived at their first destination, a Vorn colony world called Thresk. According to Coalition intelligence, it had been devastated by the war. Not by enemy attacks, but by the Vorn's own military. Resources had been stripped away to feed the war machine. Infrastructure had collapsed. The civilian population was suffering. The Persistence landed outside the largest settlement. Corvath expected to see soldiers rushing toward them. He expected weapons, fire, and screaming and death. Instead, he saw something else entirely. He saw humans leaving the ship. But they were not carrying weapons. They were carrying tools. Elena had organized her crew into teams. Engineers moved toward the broken water treatment plant that had left the colony without clean water for 3 years. Doctors set up a medical station in the town square. Technicians began examining the damaged power grid. Food supplies were unloaded and distributed to anyone who wanted them. The Vorn colonists did not know what to do. They stood and stared. These were aliens. These were the enemy. Why were they fixing things? Why were they helping? A young Vorn female approached one of the human doctors. Her arm was badly infected, an old wound that had never healed properly. The doctor smiled at her, gently examined the injury, and began treatment. She spoke soft words of comfort, even though she knew the Vorn could not understand her language. But somehow, tone and kindness needed no translation. Word spread through the colony. More Vorn came. Some were suspicious. Some were angry. But the humans turned no one away. They helped everyone. They asked for nothing in return. By the end of the first day, the water treatment plant was working again. Clean water flowed through pipes that had been dry for years. Vorn children laughed as they played in the fountains. It was a sound that had not been heard on Thresk for a very long time. Corveth watched all of this in stunned silence. He had studied war for his entire life. He knew 1,000 different battle strategies. But he had never seen anything like this. Why? He asked Alina that night as they sat together in the ship's small observation deck. Why help them? They are the enemy. Their soldiers have killed millions. Have these people killed anyone? Alina asked, gesturing toward the colony. That mother who brought her sick child to our doctors? That old farmer who thanked us for fixing his irrigation system? Are they responsible for what their government does? Corveth did not have an answer. War makes us forget, Alina continued. It makes us see enemies instead of people. The Vorn High Council wants their citizens to believe that we are monsters, that we want to destroy them. How do you fight against that kind of fear? With bigger weapons, Corveth said. It was what he had always believed. No, Alina said softly. With proof that the fear is a lie, they stayed on Thresk for 3 days. When they left, the colony was transformed. Systems that had been broken for years were now working. The sick had been treated. The hungry had been fed, and the Vorn who watched the persistence depart did not see enemies flying away. They saw something they could not explain. The pattern repeated at the next world, and the next. The persistence traveled from colony to colony, planet to planet, always announcing its presence, always offering help. Sometimes the Vorn were hostile at first. Sometimes they threw rocks or shouted insults. But the humans never fought back. They simply waited and helped, showed kindness until the anger faded. Then the Vorn military arrived. A squadron of interceptors surrounded the persistence. Above a mining colony, their weapons were hot and ready. Their commander's voice crackled over the communication system, demanding immediate surrender. Elena's response shocked everyone on both ships. We would love to have you aboard for dinner, she said. Please come as our guests. We have prepared food and would be honored by your company. The Vorn commander did not know how to respond. This was not in any tactical manual. Enemies did not invite you to dinner. It had to be a trap. But Alina kept the channel open. She talked to the Vorn commander like he was an old friend. She asked about his family. She asked about his home. She asked about his life before the war. Slowly, hesitantly, the commander began to answer. His name was Torvin. He had been fighting for 40 years. He had not seen his children in over a decade. He was tired, so very tired. Why are you here? He finally asked, What do you want from us? Nothing, Alina said. We came to help. No one helps for nothing, Torvin said. Everyone wants something. We want the war to end, Alina replied. We want your people and our people to stop dying. That is what we want. Is that not what you want to? There was a long silence. Then slowly, the Vorn interceptors lowered their weapons. Commander Torvin came aboard the Persistence, and he shared a meal with the people he had been sent to kill. They talked for hours. Alina asked him a question that no one had ever asked in 200 years of war. A simple question. An obvious question. A question that should have been asked long ago. Why are you fighting? Torvin opened his mouth to answer. Then he stopped. His face showed confusion, then pain, then something that might have been shame. The truth was that he did not know. He had been fighting for so long that he had forgotten why it started. He had been told that the Coalition were monsters. He had been told that they wanted to destroy the Vorn. But these humans had come to his space and healed his people. Where were the monsters? When Torvin left the Persistence, he did not report what had really happened. He told his superiors that the humans had escaped. He told them that the ship was not worth pursuing. It was a small lie. But it was the first lie he had ever told his commanders. And it felt more honest than anything he had done in 40 years. Stories began to spread. Whispered conversations between soldiers. Secret messages between colonies. The strange human ship that did not fight. The aliens who fixed broken things and healed the sick. It sounded like fantasy. It sounded impossible. But more and more Vorn were starting to wonder if it might be true. The High Command noticed. They did not like what they were hearing. They labeled the Persistence a psychological weapon. They declared its crew to be dangerous manipulators. They sent out orders to every fleet in the sector. Find the human ship. Destroy it immediately. Show no mercy. The greatest fleet in Vorn history was now hunting the Persistence. Admiral Jarvok himself was leading the chase. He had never failed to destroy a target. He had never shown weakness, and Captain Alina Vasquez, when she heard the news, simply smiled. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Admiral Jarvok was the most feared commander in the Vorn hegemony. He had fought in over 100 major battles. He had destroyed coalition fleets that outnumbered him 10-1. His name was spoken with terror across 1,000 worlds. When the High Council wanted something dead, they sent Jarvok. Now, with 30 dreadnoughts at his command, he had cornered the Persistence above a barren moon. His Annihilator fleet was the pride of the hegemony. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Against this force, the tiny human vessel looked like an insect waiting to be crushed. Jarvok studied the enemy ship on his view screen. It made no sense. The humans had made no attempt to run. They had not called for help. They simply sat there, waiting, as if they did not understand that they were about to die. He opened a communication channel. His voice was cold and hard. Human vessel. This is Admiral Jarvok of the Vorn hegemony. Surrender immediately or be atomized. You have 60 seconds to comply. The response came not as a private message, but as an open broadcast. The human captain was transmitting to every ship in the fleet. Every soldier could hear her words. Admiral Jarvok, Captain Alina Vasquez said, "We surrender. We will not resist. But before you fire, I want to show you something."
Oh.
Jarvok frowned. This was not standard behavior. Enemies begged. Enemies threatened. They did not calmly ask to show you something. But he was curious despite himself. What could this tiny ship possibly have that would matter? "You have 30 seconds, he said. "That is enough," Alina replied. And then she began transmitting files, thousands of them. Videos and images and reports flooded across every screen in the Vorn fleet. Soldiers stopped what they were doing and stared. Officers leaned forward in their seats. Even Jarvok, who had seen everything the galaxy could offer, found himself watching. The videos showed human crews working on Vorn worlds, engineers fixing water systems, doctors treating wounded Vorn soldiers, enemies who had been trying to kill them just hours before, technicians repairing power grids so that Vorn families could have light and warmth. There were thousands of hours of footage, all showing the same thing, humans helping Vord. Then came the letters. Messages from Vorn citizens, thanking the strange aliens who had come to their worlds. A mother wrote about how human doctors saved her daughter's life. An old farmer described how his fields were producing food again because humans had fixed his irrigation equipment. A wounded soldier talked about the human nurse who had held his hand and comforted him while his injuries were treated. Even though they could not speak each other's language, the Annihilator fleet was silent. 30 warships, with enough firepower to destroy civilizations, and not a single weapon was fired. The soldiers were too busy watching. They were seeing something that contradicted everything they had been told. Then Alina sent one more transmission. This one was different. It was not about the Vorn. It was about humanity. Images appeared of Earth's history. The great wars that humans had fought against each other. Trenches filled with mud and death. Cities burned to ash by nuclear fire. Famines and plagues and endless, senseless violence. Humans killing humans for reasons that now seemed impossibly stupid. "We know war," Alina said, her voice soft but clear. "We have been fighting each other since before we could write. We have come closer to destroying ourselves than you can imagine. We have seen the worst that intelligent beings can do to each other." She paused. When she spoke again, there was something in her voice that Jarvok had never heard from an enemy before. Sadness, understanding, compassion. We learned something that your species has not yet discovered. The only war you truly win is the one you make unnecessary. You cannot bomb people into loving you. You cannot conquer your way to peace. The only way to end hatred is to stop feeding it. The fleet remained frozen. Weapons stayed powered but unfired. Jarvok stared at his view screen at this small human woman who spoke as if she understood things he had spent 80 years trying to forget. "I am not asking you to surrender," Elena continued. "I am not asking you to betray your people. I am asking you to ask yourself a question. One simple question." She looked directly into the camera, and Jarvok felt as if she was looking straight at him. "Why are you fighting?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He had been asked this before by his own children years ago, before he stopped going home to see them. He had given them the official answer. The Coalition was evil. The Coalition wanted to destroy the Vorn way of life. The war was necessary. But was that true? He had been fighting for 80 years. He had killed more beings than he could count. And what had changed? The war continued. More soldiers died. More worlds burned. Victory was always just one more battle away, but it never actually arrived. He thought about the videos he had just seen. Humans healing Vorn wounded. Humans feeding Vorn hungry. If these were monsters, they had a strange way of showing it. "Admiral?" His first officer's voice broke through his thoughts. "Your orders?" Jarvok realized that his entire fleet was waiting. Thousands of soldiers, all watching to see what he would do. The human ship sat before them, completely defenseless. One word from him, and it would cease to exist, but he could not give that word. "Hold fire," he said quietly, "Admiral." The first officer sounded confused. "The High Council ordered us to destroy this ship. They said it was a psychological weapon. Does that look like a weapon to you?" Jarvok pointed at the screen where footage still played of humans helping Vorn citizens. "Does kindness look like a weapon?" The first officer had no answer. For long minutes, nothing happened. The Annihilator fleet hung in space, weapons hot, but silent. The Persistence waited, making no attempt to flee. Two forces that should have been enemies, frozen in a moment of uncertainty. Then something extraordinary happened. Across the fleet, other officers began speaking up. They asked questions. They expressed doubts. They talked about the videos they had seen. For the first time in anyone's memory, Vorn soldiers were questioning their orders. Jarvok made a decision that changed everything. "Open a channel to the human ship," he said. A private channel. When Elena's face appeared on his personal screen, Jarvok did something he had not done in 80 years of warfare. He spoke honestly. "I've spent my entire life following orders," he said. "I was told who to hate. I was told who to kill. I never asked why. I never thought there was another choice." He paused, struggling with words that felt foreign in his mouth. "You showed me I had a choice." "I did not know that before." Lena nodded slowly. There was no triumph in her eyes. No satisfaction at winning some kind of victory. Just understanding. "We all have choices," she said. "Sometimes we just need someone to remind us." The Annihilator fleet did not return to Vorn space that day. Jarvok reported that the human ship had escaped. It was a lie, and everyone in his fleet knew it. But not a single soldier reported him. Something had changed. Something had cracked in the foundation of the Vorn war machine. And the High Council, watching from their palace far away, began to realize that this human ship was more dangerous than any weapon they had ever faced. They had to destroy it. Not just the ship, the idea. The hope they would send the Shadow Fleet, the assassins. The killers who left no witnesses, but they were already too late. The seed had been planted, and seeds once planted are very hard to kill. Captain Elena Vasquez never wanted to start a revolution. She had come to Vorn space with a simple mission. Help people. Show kindness. Prove that there was another way to live. But what she had started was growing beyond anything she had planned. Across the hegemony, something was happening. Soldiers who had fought for decades were laying down their weapons. Colony worlds were refusing to send supplies to the military. Workers in weapons factories were slowing down their production. It was not organized. It was not coordinated, but it was spreading like fire through dry grass. The stories about the human ship had become legends. Every Voran seemed to know someone who had met the strange aliens who healed instead of harmed. The videos that Alina had transmitted were being copied and shared through secret channels. For the first time in 200 years, ordinary Voran citizens were asking questions that could get them killed. Why are we fighting? What are we dying for? What if everything we have been told is a lie? The High Council was terrified. Not of the coalition fleets they had been battling for centuries. Those enemies they understood. Those enemies they could fight. But this was different. This was an attack on the very foundations of their power. For 200 years, the Council had maintained control through one simple tool: fear. Fear of the enemy. Fear of defeat. Fear of what would happen if the war was lost. As long as the citizens were afraid, they would obey. They would sacrifice. They would die without question. But the human ship had broken that fear. And without fear, the Council had nothing. In desperation, they made their move. They declared Captain Alina Vasquez to be a mind poisoner. They said her kindness was a trick, a psychological weapon designed to weaken Voran minds. They offered a bounty for her capture or death. The amount was staggering. More wealth than entire star systems produced in a decade. Anyone who brought them the human captain would become the richest. Being in the hegemony, then they sent the Shadow Fleet. The Shadow Fleet was not like other military forces. They were assassins, hunters, killers who operated in complete darkness and left no survivors. Their ships were invisible to sensors. Their methods were brutal beyond description. In all of Voran history, no target of the Shadow Fleet had ever escaped. Corveth was the first to detect them. His instruments picked up the faintest trace, a whisper of distortion in the fabric of space, and he knew immediately what it meant. "We need to run," he told Alina. His voice was calm, but his hearts were beating fast. "The Shadow Fleet is coming. You do not understand. These are not soldiers. These are monsters. They will not stop. They will not negotiate. They will hunt us until we are dead." Alina looked at him. Her face was tired. The past weeks had taken a toll on her, but her eyes were still clear, still determined. "We cannot run," she said. "If we run, everything we have done means nothing. The Voran who believed in us will think we abandoned them. If we stay, we die," Corveth said. Maybe Alina agreed. But we knew that when we started. This was never about surviving. It was about showing another way. Before Corveth could argue, a new signal appeared on their screens. Ships were approaching, but not Shadow Fleet ships. These were massive dreadnoughts, familiar profiles of the Annihilator fleet. Admiral Jarvok had come. Alina opened a channel. "Admiral, you should not be here. The Shadow Fleet is hunting us. If you are seen helping us, the Council will declare you a traitor." Jarvok's scarred face appeared on screen. He looked older than before, as if the weight of his decision had aged him years in just days. "The Council already knows," he said. "I refuse to answer their questions about why your ship escaped. I am already a traitor in their eyes. My crew as well. We have all made our choice." "Why?" Alina asked. "Why risk everything for us?" Jarvok was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he had spent decades hiding. "I have been a soldier for 80 years. I have followed every order. I have won every battle, and I have lost everything that matters. My family does not know me. My children grew up without a father. I have spent my whole life fighting, and I cannot even remember what I was fighting for." He looked directly at Alina. "You reminded me that I had a choice. For the first time in 80 years, I am making a choice that feels right. If I die for that choice, at least I will die as myself." The Annihilator fleet took position around the Persistence. 30 dreadnoughts forming a protective barrier around one small human ship. It was insane. It was beautiful. It was something that had never happened in the history of Voran warfare. But the Shadow Fleet was not deterred. They appeared like ghosts, materializing from the darkness of space. Their ships were black and angular, designed to look like death itself. There were only 12 of them, but each one was a weapon of terror. The Shadow Fleet commander broadcast a single message. "Admiral Jarvok, you have been declared a traitor to the hegemony. Stand down and surrender the human ship, or be destroyed along with them." Jarvok's response was to power up his weapons. For a terrible moment, it looked like battle was inevitable. The largest ships in the Vorn fleet facing the deadliest. If they fought, thousands would die. Then Alina did something unexpected. She moved the Persistence forward, out from behind the protective barrier of dreadnoughts. Her tiny ship, alone, facing the Shadow Fleet. "Stop," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Everyone stop. This is exactly what the Council wants. They want us to fight each other. They want Vorn, killing Vorn, because as long as we are fighting, they stay in power." She turned her transmission to the Shadow Fleet directly. "I know who you are. I know what you have done. But I also know that you are Vorn. You have families somewhere. People who love you. People who wait for you to come home. Is this really how you want to spend your lives? Is this really who you want to be?" The Shadow Fleet did not respond, but they did not fire either. "The Council has lied to you," Helena continued. "They have lied to everyone. They told you the Coalition were monsters who wanted to destroy you. But look at what we have done. We came to your space. We healed your sick. We fed your hungry. We asked for nothing. Does that sound like monsters to you?" Still nothing from the Shadow Fleet, but Corveth noticed something on his sensors. The assassin ships were not advancing. They were not retreating. They were just ... waiting, listening. Then a message came from the Coalition. Corveth read it, and his face went pale. "Captain," he said, "we have a problem. A very big problem." He showed her the report. Across the hegemony, the High Council's response to the growing unrest had been revealed. They were not going to negotiate. They were not going to reform. They were going to teach their citizens a lesson they would never forget. They were activating the Void Cradle. It was a weapon from the earliest days of Vorn history. A planet killer. A device capable of destroying entire worlds in an instant. And they were aiming it at their own rebellious colonies. Millions of Vorn citizens were about to die. Men, women, children. The same people the Persistence had been helping for weeks. All of them wiped out to send a message to anyone who dared to question the Council. "How long?" Elena asked. 6 hours, Corveth said. "Maybe less." Elena closed her eyes. This was not supposed to happen. She had wanted to end the war, not start a massacre. But she had underestimated how far the Council would go to maintain power. When she opened her eyes, there was steel in them. "Then we have 6 hours to stop them," she said. "How?" Corvath demanded. "The Void Cradle is the most protected installation in Vorn space. Even if every ship here attacked together, we could not breach its defenses in time." "We are not going to attack," Alina said. "We are not going to fire a single shot." Corveth stared at her. "Then what are you going to do?" Alina smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who was about to bet everything on one last desperate gamble. "I am going to tell the truth," she said. "And I am going to make sure every single Vorn in the galaxy hears it." The Void Cradle hummed with terrible power. Deep within its massive structure, energy cores that had been dormant for centuries were coming alive. The weapon had not been used in over 1,000 years. The last time it fired, an entire civilization had ceased to exist. Now the High Council was preparing to turn it against their own people, in their grand chamber. The 5 members of the Council watched the activation sequence with cold satisfaction. The rebellious colonies would be taught a lesson. The whispers of peace would be silenced forever. After today, no Vorn would ever dare to question their rule again. "Target the 3 largest rebel colonies first," the Supreme Counselor ordered. "Let the others watch. Let them understand what happens to those who forget their place." On the other side of the hegemony, Captain Elena Vasquez was executing her final plan. The cargo hold of the Persistence, the mysterious supplies that no one had understood, was finally being revealed. Thousands of small communication relays, carefully designed and assembled during the long journey into Vorn space. Are they all in position? Alina asked. Her communications officer nodded. Deployed across every sector we visited, every colony, every military outpost, every population center. If we broadcast, everyone will hear. Alina had been planting these relays since the first day. Every time the Persistence stopped to help a colony, her crew had secretly placed the small devices. It was a network covering half of Vorn space, a network built specifically for this moment. The Council is broadcasting their ultimatum, Corvith reported. His voice was grim. They are giving the rebel colonies 1 hour to surrender. After that, the Void Cradle fires. Lena nodded. She had expected this. The Council would want their citizens to watch. They would want everyone to see what happened to those who disobeyed. Then we broadcast at the same time, she said. Let them see the truth. She opened a channel. Her signal cut through every frequency, overriding the Council's transmission, reaching every corner of Vorn space. Billions of beings stopped what they were doing and listened. People of the Vorn hegemony, Alina began. My name is Alina Vasquez. I am the captain of the human ship that has been traveling through your space. You have heard many things about us. Your leaders have called us mind poisoners. They have called us manipulators. They have told you we are dangerous. She paused to let her words sink in. They are right. We are dangerous. But not because we want to hurt you. We are dangerous because we showed you another way to live. We came to your worlds and healed your sick. We fixed your broken infrastructure. We fed your hungry. We asked for nothing in return. And for that crime, your council wants to kill us. She transmitted the video evidence of what her crew had done across foreign space. The same videos she had shown Admiral Jarvok. Images of humans and Vorn working together. Images of kindness. Images of hope. But we are not the real criminals here, Alina continued. Your council is about to fire the Void Cradle at your own worlds. They are going to murder millions of Vorn, citizens, women, children, families. They are going to kill them because they dared to ask questions, because they dared to hope for peace. Across the hegemony, the reaction was immediate. Citizens stared at screens in disbelief. Soldiers stopped in their tracks. The Council's own broadcasters tried to cut the signal, but the human relay network was too strong, too distributed. The truth could not be silenced. You have been told that you need the Council to protect you, Alina said. You have been told that the war is necessary, that the enemy is evil, that there is no other way. But look at what they are doing right now. Look at who is pointing weapons at you. It is not the Coalition. It is not humans. It is your own leaders. In the Council chamber, the Supreme Counselor was screaming at his technicians to cut the broadcast, but it was impossible. The signal was coming from everywhere at once. You want to destroy us? Elena's voice rose with passion. Go ahead. We are one ship. But you cannot destroy an idea. You cannot bomb kindness out of existence. You cannot murder hope. She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. I am not asking you to fight. I am not asking you to die. I am asking you something much simpler. Stop obeying. Just stop. Put down your weapons. Walk away from your posts. Refuse to be part of this anymore. The Council has power only because you give it to them. The moment you stop giving, they have nothing. She took a deep breath. This was the moment everything came down to. Either the Vorn would listen, or they would not. Either 200 years of war ended today, or it continued forever. The only people who want you dead are the ones who claim to lead you, she said. You do not need us to save you. You never did. You just need to stop obeying. Then she ended the transmission and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. The galaxy held its breath. The Void Cradle continued its activation sequence. The Council prepared to give the final order. Then the reports started coming in. On a military base in the outer sectors, soldiers simply put down their weapons and walked away. In a weapons factory, workers shut down their machines and refused to restart them. On the Void Cradle itself, engineers began disabling power systems. ignoring the screaming orders of their commanders. Corveth watched the reports flow across his screen with tears in his eyes. He had spent his entire life studying war. He had believed that violence was the only way to change the galaxy. And now he was watching it change without a single shot being fired. The Shadow Fleet, which had been poised to attack the Persistence, powered down their weapons. One by one, their commanders broadcast messages of support. They were done following orders. They were done being tools of fear. Admiral Jarvok received word that his crew were not the only ones who had turned against the Council. Across the military, entire fleets were standing down. Admirals who had fought for decades were refusing orders. The military machine that had conquered 3,000 worlds was grinding to a halt in the council chamber. The Supreme Counselor watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from every sector. Colonies in open revolt. Military units refusing to respond. Even the guards outside his own door were laying down their weapons. Fire the Void Cradle. He screamed, "Kill them all." But there was no one left to obey. The technicians had abandoned their posts. The power systems were being shut down. The great weapon that had terrified the galaxy was being dismantled. Piece by the very people who were supposed to operate it. 6 hours after Elena's broadcast, Admiral Jarvok personally entered the council chamber with a squad of soldiers who had chosen to stand with him. The 5 counselors were arrested without a fight. There was no one left to defend them. The war that had lasted 200 years was over. Not ended by bombs or fleets or the deaths of billions. Ended by a single ship that refused to fight. Ended by the simple revolutionary idea that enemies could become friends. 6 months later, the Treaty of Persistence was signed. It was the formal peace agreement between the Galactic Coalition and the New Vorn Republic. Trade routes were opened. Borders were dissolved. For the first time in living memory, beings from different worlds could travel freely without fear. Corveth submitted his final report to the Coalition Assembly. He stood before the same chamber where he had watched Captain Vasquez make her impossible promise. And he spoke from the heart. "We spent 2 centuries trying to defeat the Vorn with weapons," he said. "We lost trillions of lives. We destroyed countless worlds. And we never came close to winning. Then one human ship did what all our fleets could not. They won without firing a shot." He paused, struggling to find words for something he still did not fully understand. "I do not know how to explain humans. They are young and small and should not be dangerous. But they have a gift that we older species have forgotten. They remember that enemies are just people who have not yet become friends." Captain Elena Vasquez returned to Earth as a hero. But when reporters asked her about her victory, she only shook her head. "We did not conquer anyone," she said. "We just reminded them that they did not have to be conquered either. Every being in the galaxy has the power to choose kindness. We just helped them remember." The UES Persistence was retired from service and placed in a museum. It was the only ship in galactic history to win a war without ever being armed. Visitors came from every corner of known space to see it, to touch its hull, to try to understand how something so small had changed so much. On its plaque, there is a simple inscription. The words that Elena spoke when she first stood before the Coalition Assembly, asking for a chance to do the impossible. "The strongest weapon is the one you never have to use." But there is another plaque, smaller, less noticed. It was placed there by the first Vorn ambassador to visit Earth. It reads, "To the humans who taught us that war is a choice. Thank you for showing us we could choose differently. The galaxy is at peace now. It's not because the enemies were destroyed. Not because one side won, but because finally, after 200 years of darkness, someone had the courage to light a candle. And that candle's light was kindness.